Great, yeah.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
It is one fucking season time tonight. What the hell is that? We'll get to it in a second. I am Evan Husney. Of course, joined by, to my left, we got Big T, Tom Fitzgerald. What's going on, T? Welcome to the new show.
Hey, one fucking season. I think it's going to get kind of spicy up in here. Seasoning.
Oh, is that what kind of season it is?
That's the season.
That's what we're talking about, right?
It's the time of the season, right?
Yeah.
It's cooking with one seasoning.
That's what it is. That's what the show is tonight. And joining us for that is all the way on the far right, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. What's going on?
Can we not say that I'm on the far right? Far right podcast.
We're just being honest.
Yeah.
Far right of the screen to clarify. For
camera far right. Okay. So to my camera alt right, I have over here, we got Miss Rémy Bennett. Welcome back to the show. Hey, this is the Mulholland Drive crew, everybody, from just a few weeks back. So we're getting back together. But welcome, Rémy. Welcome back.
Good to be back. Thank you. I'm excited about this.
Hell yeah. All right, let's tell the people what the hell we are doing, okay? So if you weren't watching last week's episode, at the very end, we teased that we're going to try something a little different for this week. So we're going to put the 1 fucking hour, one movie, 1 fucking hour gimmick aside just for this week, because we really wanted to talk about a particular TV series. And we've been trying to figure out how the hell can we cover television on our show, because doing it one episode at a time, 1 hour for each episode sounds like a nightmare.
Sounds absolutely dreadful. Episode 13, season
Penny dreadful.
5.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah, right.
No way.
Sounds terrible. So, we wanted to create like something we could do every once in a while, once in a blue moon, when we felt like we had the TV itch. We could just cover one fucking season of a show. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So if we feel like, hey, this week I want to talk about Sopranos season 3, then now we can fucking do it. Or if we want to talk
Sex
about
and the City season 4,
Hey,
oh,
it could happen.
Which will happen, I'm sure, sometime at some point.
Yep.
But really, this is an excuse for us to talk about a new show that has just wrapped up airing very recently. And of course, one of the main creators behind this show is someone we love very much, Nathan Fielder. Shout out. We've covered one of his, the actual series finale of Nathan for You in the archives. Check that out, Finding Francis. And so we were all about The Curse. That's what we're talking about tonight. So we wanted to figure out a way we could just fucking talk about The Curse and get it out of our systems. I've now watched it twice. And of course, this is Nathan Fielder's new show with Benny Safdie starring Emma Stone, and it's fucking been warping my brain and disturbing me for weeks on end. Tom?
And just to be clear, so for all you fans, all dozen of you, 1 fucking hour will resume in its normal format next week and the weeks after, and then once in a while this will pop up with a specific show and a specific season, but the format otherwise is not changing beyond this occasional little cherry tomato popping up.
Cherry tomato gang here. First. There you go, you were first on that one. So but this is going to be exciting because there's also another thing we're going to do. We're going to let the hour time limit clock take a little chill ski, and we're going to blow that out of our minds because we're going to just freewheel this as long as it takes for us to get through talking about the entire 10-episode season of The Curse.
9 hours tonight.
Yeah, we could be here till tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Talking about this. We don't know. We're going to see what happens.
We can fit more, because we can fit more cherry tomato jokes in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
1 an hour, yeah.
So strap in. This is a very special show. It's there's a lot to talk about. I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this show with you guys. just to unpack it, to try to understand it more, and to get into just all the things we also love about it. So if you've not yet seen The Curse, you definitely want to race to Paramount Plus and check it out. Because it is worth your time. It's a fucking phenomenal show. I mean, it's better than any movie that's coming out, right now.
Do watch it before enjoying this episode here, because it's going to be spoilery and just
confusing,
disorienting. And
you won't understand. So this is not, maybe you could tune into like, 1 fucking hour on, I don't know, Straight Time and, or like something.
Phantasm.
Phantasm. You might be able to follow along if you haven't seen those movies, but with this, you probably need to see the show, and you should anyway, because it really is something special. And for 2023, that's really saying something. So, all right, and I'm ready to fucking get into this, guys. If you are, just go straight into it. Now we don't have, there's no clock to start, so I guess we'll just sort of have our agreement that the show is going to start.
Yes,
land acknowledgement.
Oh yeah, right. You're right. Okay.
Yes. Perfect. Sorry.
So you established the land acknowledgement.
Yeah. Okay. So I will do that right now. We're going to begin talking about the show, and let's start it off like how we normally do on this fine program. Just giving a little synopsis action to set us in the mood for the show. Here it is. So The Curse centers on Whitney and Asher Siegel, a newlywed couple struggling to bring their vision for eco-conscious housing to the small community of Espanola, New Mexico. Their efforts are complicated when an eccentrically flawed reality TV producer, Dougie, holy shit, sees an opportunity in their story. As the series unfolds, the couple finds themselves caught in a mysterious web of ethical and moral gray zones, all while trying to keep their relationship afloat. The Curse stars Oscar winner Emma Stone, Nathan Fielder, and Benny Safdie, and it premiered on November 10th of this past year on Showtime. So that's, of course, what we're talking about. And now to really get into it, I thought, Rémy, you also thought it'd be a good idea to sort of kick things off, just kind of contextualizing. We have the brain trust of this project. You have, as we mentioned, Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie collaborating on this. It's a first-time collaboration. Very unique filmmakers and TV show makers here working together. So take it away.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, this show challenges our perceptions of what kind of a normative episodic television viewing experience is like. And that's sort of part of the process. And so I think the combined creative vision of Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie is sort of this amalgamation of both of their approaches to filmmaking, which in a lot of ways are more akin to sociological or anthropological studies, and less narratives in sort of a traditional sense. And so a lot of what Nathan has done with his past work with Nathan For You and The Rehearsal is that he's really observing and almost conducting his own experiments about the nature of human behavior. Mm-hmm. And he's constantly examining the sort of complex and troubled line between authenticity and inauthenticity, and how those things blur, and how we as humans are constantly, from a sociological standpoint, constantly performing and performing these roles that are asked for us, and that we're all sort of in this dynamic with each other. And sometimes there's something that occurs that sort of disrupts those performances. And it says a lot about artifice and how much artifice is sort of a part of our everyday life. And then with Safdie, his work, like, Uncut Gems, what was the
Heaven Knows What? Yeah.
Heaven knows what, sort of as filmmakers, they were going into communities, exploring sort of subculture, subterranean elements of culture, using non-actors in a sort of a documentary sense, and also an anthropological sense, sort of blurring those lines. So this show is sort of a bizarre amalgamation of that in the trappings of an HGTV reality experiment.
Which is mind-blowing.
Great
sandbox to be playing in. And just one thing before I kick it off to you guys is I think I heard Benny talking about this. He said something about how, he was a big admirer of Nathan's work, Nathan For You, or The Rehearsal, which came out a few years ago. And he was talking about how Nathan, is sort of working in this weird reality TV, esque genre where he's sort of trying to find, he's trying to take some reality, nonfiction, and sort of find fiction in it. And the Safdies are kind of doing the opposite, where, they're working in fiction and, like, as you said, Rémy, immersing themselves in real cultures and using non-actors, or trying to sort of find the nonfiction realism elements out of those. And so it's this kind of, they worked in inverse in some ways, and then now they're kind of meeting at the middle, bringing their different styles and combining them. And of course, centered around their mutual appreciation and obsession with reality TV, which we're seeing, obviously, with The Curse being about the making of a very cringe and inauthentic HD TV program. So yeah, it's very bizarre, these two guys, but also very perfect. It's very fitting. They definitely feel like, I think, Rémy, you mentioned to me earlier that this feels very like our generation. This is the voices of our generation, some of the more cutting edge talents that we have, and they're coming together to make something, really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think at first I was a big question mark for me, like, that these guys were getting together, but it does make a lot of sense, especially when you watch the show, because it does feel like, I was thinking a lot about Heaven Knows What watching, and and that use, like you said, it is almost the opposite of what Nathan does. For that. We showed that at the theater. I was lucky to meet Benny and I met Nathan too there. I've lived kind of a charmed life. So, but when Benny came out, he was explaining the background of the movie, that the girl in that movie was someone that they met on the street, and she was like a junkie, and they set her up in an apartment to write her the script on her life, and she became the main actor in the movie, and so it was sort of like tweaking reality, and they had all this documentary techniques, and even as I'm talking about, when they shot that movie, and even as I'm talking about it, I'm realizing that, like, again, this checks the 1 fucking hour box of, like, doc, like 90% of the films that we love have some element of documentary to them.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, there's a real a great pairing there, and it is absolutely what you're saying, is that they sort of like are like yin and yang of like how they fuck with reality, and then coming together to be in the middle.
That's right.
To make something wholly original that looks and feels like nothing that you've really seen on TV before.
No.
100%.
My thing is just, it's been over 20 years that we've had, this new form that we're just all steeped in, which is reality television, even more so than The Real World from MTV in the 90s. It really started with Survivor, actually, blowing up. And what I mean by that, it's that reality TV that's not just like a fly on the wall depiction of reality, but a sculpting of reality, and putting individuals who aren't actors, they're sort of living their lives, and putting them through the paces, and how much everything is so manicured. Yeah. And this show does depict what we all already know, but like, people have to do different takes of when they say something off the cuff. It's like, can you do that again, but actually address it as a question and say her name?
Right.
This person who just said something, the way we talk in life, then has to do like 5 takes about how they are going to speak in this moment. And then you just extrapolate that, and then then it's not really reality. It's just other bizarre hybrid. And anyway, what I'm saying is Nathan is really the true artist of these past 20 years to address this thing that really is usually just treated with derision or ignored, or put up with or loved by, brainless people. And he's really investigating and finding a lot of interesting places with it, starting with Nathan For You. So I love seeing him develop, because this is the third new folding of the onion that he's taking in dealing with our times, both the climate of our times and how people are living and trying to be real human beings in this incredibly artificial world. It's compounded not just now by reality TV, but then also by social media and what are we calling it? Like personal branding, you know?
Yeah.
He's really the only person investigating it, and he's doing it brilliantly.
And Tom, what we were talking about earlier too is how underneath all of that social criticism about artifice and performance and sort of mimicking reality, like underneath it is the sort of sadness of like the lack of connection that people have with each other, the deep insecurity, the kind of like the void, and sort of what the impact of all of this culture that's been happening to us for so long is really on our souls, is what you were kind of saying earlier.
Just my big takeaway on the second viewing is just, it's how each of these people are lead characters, and maybe all of us in this dynamic, like we're having our souls crushed and compacted by the weight of this thing that, like it does not allow for having a true identity, certainly with other people, but maybe even for yourself. And you start really losing your way about, like having a genuine life. Yeah. And I think that's the heart of this show. And
totally.
It's heartbreaking to see.
It is.
And the loneliness, I was going to say, of the characters is just, the loneliness is something.
Everyone wants to be friends in this show or have friends.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
Well,
it's also cyclical in a way too, because it's like, with the effect that reality TV has had on our minds in the past 20 years and on culture and entertainment and social media, it's just created this very ridiculous, depressing world that we do live in, and it's crazy. And so finally it sort of feels like with this show, it's starting to pick apart the sort of phoniness, the artifice, as you're saying, and of our culture and people in it. It's really just because now it's like our world has become so confused and centered around clout and the really ugly side of people don't want to show their real side anymore. Everyone's showing a fake side.
Well, there's a lot of passive aggression.
Yeah, that too.
Which is another huge staple of the show.
It is.
That's very modern times where, like in the old days, like old Italian guys in Brooklyn would be like, shut the fuck up, and like that just isn't cool. You can't do that.
You can't. You out of your fucking mind? You out of your fucking mind?
You talking to me, pal? It's like that is so bizarre and alien in 2024. It
was a better world.
It's been replaced though by, again, passive aggressive behavior.
Yep.
And it's very insidious. And, it's hard to pinpoint because you can't just react to it.
Right.
Because it's all diffused.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Do you want to comment on that, Marcus?
Before we get off of TV, I just wanted to say that not only is it a commentary on reality TV, but I feel like it's also can be viewed as a commentary on like just episodic TV, what we've come to expect from prestige television and stuff, just in like the form of the show and how it's laid out. We've got 9 episodes of a show that have things that could be interpreted as plot points that are going somewhere, that are all going to come together on the 10th episode. And the whole time I was like, what's with that girl's hair? Like, I was like following these little plot leads thinking it was going. I was like, I have no idea where it's going, but I can't wait to see how they tie all this shit together. And the audience becomes kind of wrapped. You do get wrapped up in that part of it too. Yeah. And then the 10th episode just kind of dispenses of all that and makes a completely not different, but a completely unexpected statement that makes those things seem less important. So
things aren't
in a way, I feel like it is a commentary and just like
exactly.
It's a commentary on the Better Call Sauls.
It is.
It can be viewed that way, and the audience is like got a participatory, is participating in that adventure.
Because this show is not being very warmly received by the culture.
Before we get into that, real quick, I just want to put a bow on what Marcus was saying. Is just the idea of like, it is subverting expectation. It's not. It's getting us out of being trained of like cliffhanger sort of TV. But the other thing that it does, one last little piece that I think is important to point out about while we're on Benny and Nathan's approach, is just talking about how it is also a deconstruction, I think, of their own work.
Yeah.
We were sort of talking about this, I think, when we did Finding Frances, we were talking about how Nathan's, last show, the rehearsal is absolutely a sort of self-criticism, deconstruction, if you will, of everything he went through on Nathan For You, and maybe the quasi-guilt he had for sort of, quasi-manipulating people for, the benefit of his own show, the exploitation. And I'm sure that, Benny, I don't know as well, but I'm sure everything he's learned, about being a director and a producer and an actor in terms of all that stuff, that they also are bringing not only the mirror up to our culture, but they're also kind of bringing it up to, just their filmmaking in general, making it very personal, which I think is also a sign of a great artist, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about earlier. It's also like a meta commentary on that moral ambiguity of using real people and sort of exploiting those people's authenticity for your own benefit. I mean, like a cynical way of looking at the Safdie's movies are sort of like, where do we appropriate other people's authenticity and bring it into the fold of our hipster
well
movie?
Like a Harmony Korine
exploitation
and Harmony
because class, actually this show, the Curse, there's a lot about class,
exactly,
and I think that class is just ignored. Like there's a lot of like the tenets of woke. It's definitely race, obviously, as we all know, and silence on class, more or less, except vaguely like, oh, billionaires need to pay taxes. And it's just class is not discussed, but this show's all about it. And so to the point, what I'm saying is, like, I actually met the woman who stars in Heaven Knows What, her story, which is very nice, but she, I could tell she didn't have an education of any sort, and so she's already kind of like handicapped by speaking, like back and forth, like really savvy with, cool people in Manhattan or and Silver Lake. And so she's coming from a different class. Yeah. And I don't think she has the capacity to be in control of how her story's told or to put a stop and go like, whoa, I don't like this.
The agency going in to do that.
Exactly.
Which is so freaking interesting because on so many levels, The Curse is addressing that, and they are interrogating themselves as filmmakers and implicating themselves in that. I mean, when you look at like American Movie and then Storytelling by Todd Solondz that was made as a comment to American Movie, and sort of, this idea of taking, working class people or lower class people with drug addictions or grit, and then like, oh, I'm going to, bring you, same thing, Gummo.
Poverty porn.
It's
poverty porn.
The most chilling laughs you'll hear are, Brooklyn laughs at working class people. Modern Brooklyn. Because I saw American Movie in the Lower East Side.
I did too.
And it was a laugh fest. It was like horror, knee slapping, and it was like, wow, like it's just derision. It's just like it's a circus. It's a clown show, and that has really maintained throughout reality television.
Right.
Like duck hunting season. What is that show?
Right.
Duck Dynasty.
But I think even more disturbing is when it's done in like an art house way. Like, so I think there's so many dynamics to this topic. Like it's in documentary. It's like the social justice documentaries of like, what story are you mining and for what purposes? What traumas are we exploiting? So it's like this show does a really interesting job.
That's I think it's really interesting. The laptop class controls storytelling. And they're not giving it up whatsoever. And again, all I'm saying is this show amazingly addresses these things that are otherwise not even discussed like in think pieces these days.
Because it's so many, it touches on so many layers of it. It touches on the gentrification. It touches on the artifice of the social media. It touches on the white saviorism, but it also is like an indictment of filmmaking. It's like there's, and then we were saying before, it's such a piece that defines our generation as like the millennial generation that we were, I think, Tom, you were going to say earlier that like, it's been tricky the way this has been received because we, like you said, we don't have that distance yet.
Let me say that.
It's like you need about 10 years for to really pick apart something. And this show is insanely, 2023.
Let me.
But the thing is, I'm sure that millennials love this show, and it's a huge hit, right?
Yeah, I think with some of them. Well, no.
I've talked
beloved and everyone's talking about it.
Well, hang on.
You would hope so.
You'd hope so, but
No. I'm saying no. It is. I'm going to make an assumption right now that it's big with millennials. No,
I don't know. I don't know
think
because
there's some.
I set you up. It's not being well received.
I know. I was trying to say things and I kept getting
sorry, Evan,
stepped
please.
on. What's insane about this is that the lack of conversation around this show it's been very silent out there in terms of the reaction to this show. And yeah, we were talking earlier. It's like it's not a comedy, it appeals to maybe people who are fans of Nathan's very unique brand of comedy, but it is definitely not a comedy. It's some of the darkest shit I've ever fucking seen on TV. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't even. Yeah. It's like it is. It is when you're making a character that has a micro penis. And you're dwelling on said micro penis many times. I mean, that's some dark shit, when you're really getting inside the head of somebody and dealing with that psychologically. That's pretty fucking dark.
Even them trying to joke about it.
I know.
And bullying this person relentlessly.
And bullying him. Oh, it's brutal. So it's not really a comedy, but it's not really getting well received by the mass culture. I think anyone, because I think for the main reason is because it's too fucking close to the bone. It is too cutting edge. It's too in the now. There are so many people out there of my generation specifically who are still living in the bubble of the curse world. Everybody is still wrapped up.
The Whitneys are everywhere.
The Whitneys are everywhere. And I think for most people when they sit down and watch this, they're not making the connection of what, if you want to say it's satirizing or it's parodying in a subtle way or it's what it's sort of unpacking.
It does feel like they found a way to have a conversation that people haven't been able to have.
Yes.
Right.
And then the rest of the world isn't ready to hear it. Yeah.
Yes.
It feels that way.
Yeah. And like we were saying, it's not a parody. It's not broad comedy where they're caricaturing to the extent that you can just point and laugh like an SNL sketch. Like these are searing character portraits of like deep pain, personal pain.
Well, like I was saying, like when the show starts, when I first started watching, I was like, okay, who am I going to hate? What's going on? I don't want to hate these people. And by the end, it's like, I don't hate any of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel. Maybe pity or something.
Because you do see the nuances with all of them. You see
of them.
the insecurity. You see like the loneliness and where that pathetic desperation is coming from. It's like a deep pit of loneliness and dislocation. Yeah. And so you don't laugh at them or hate them. You're just like, this is sad that the culture has put us here,
Yes.
It's a tragedy.
It is. Yeah. It's a modern tragedy. Last little thing to put a bow on all of this before we move on to talking about the characters, the rich, deep, nuanced characters that we're about to get into, is just a little bit on the sort of inspiration for this show. I think it's worth pointing out. Benny Safdie has said in interviews that when his wife was pregnant, he was spending a lot of time watching a lot of HGTV, home and garden television. And Lord knows I watched a lot of that growing up. My mom was a big HGTV fan. Big time. HGTV's always got to be on. So he was into it, but it's obviously much different now than it was when I was growing up. A lot of reality shows about of the buying and selling, the flipping of houses and things, and so he just thought, he was so fascinated, by this aspirational content, and but he would see these sort of husband and wife hosts, which is a very common thing on HGTV, I guess, and he could sense the tension. He could sense that maybe these two people don't really like each other in real life, sort of the nonverbal communication and between these characters, and really got it fascinated with the concept of the reality in this very artificial representation of these people, and fascinated of reality,
like the truth that's sneaking through. I think truth is not a bad word here because reality is very confused as a signifying term. Sure, but I think maybe like you're saying, truth. Like finding the truth
in reality,
in the reality context, and that's like a facial expression or how they don't or do say something at the right time, or their body language.
Right. And he also commented on, we were talking about this earlier, about the tagline slogan of HGTV, which is, Rémy?
I think it was, if you don't like your neighborhood, change it. And I think he said that that like chilled him to the bone. Like it sent like a feeling of terror through his body, that like this idea that we feel like we have the power to like alter these environments that are not our own. And I think that also speaks to what you were saying, Tom, about sort of like the laptop, what did you call it?
Media class.
The laptop media class of like Silver Lake coffee shop, flat white people. Even like their hubris of like colonizing. And I know this word colonizing is complicated because it's a very Whitney thing to say as well. So there's nuances with that language too, which is interesting to talk about. But it's true. It's like these, this kind of upper middle class, liberal arts educated, you know, liberal white couples who decide to impose their upscale hipsterdom on everyone, and decimate neighborhoods and complete expanses of areas and ecosystems.
Do it bluntly, and it's from one direction. And that great first episode of The Curse has a perfect embodiment of what we're discussing here, wherein the working class local woman who's going to that strip mall for her whole life goes into this new foofy gentrified coffee shop, and indeed it's like that's a drip coffee, we can get that with almond milk for you, and the woman's just like, coffee.
Yes.
Coffee. And it's just what I'm saying is there's a chasm that's like an Atlantic Ocean wide between these two people. And what's really obnoxious is like, maybe try to meet people halfway.
Totally. Yeah, and the pretense is that they're doing that, and that's what makes it so demented and sick.
Yeah,
with no self-awareness, that in their minds they believe that they're meeting the community, but it's all performance. It has nothing to do with them.
And the dynamic back to class, like you can't meet halfway if the class on top is dominating everything through money. And making by fiat, making all these decisions to your strip mall, and that's what happens right in the show.
Well, and gentrification, becomes then a big theme of this show, because that's sort of when Benny was watching these shows, he was sort of like, you never see the effect that these shows have on the small towns that they're setting these, episodes in. So that got him thinking, about setting sort of a story in a town where people are coming in, and what effect does it have?
Leave, what is it like?
Yeah, right. For sure.
Exactly.
But it also, what he's doing, which is interesting, is like he's taking that idea with the home flipping show, but he's kind of accentuating that with this, Silver Lake upper middle class archetype that's not even very common to the reality TV genre. So it's you don't ever see those kind of people.
True.
So he's not really talking about the HTV people. He's just using that as a framework to talk about this other culture. That is colonizing and gentrifying everywhere you go. I mean, in LA, it's everywhere. And
there's an active battle right now in Boyle Heights. And we were talking about this before. The first thing that comes in is a coffee shop. And there have been protests in Boyle Heights where they don't want to lose their identity like all the other neighborhoods.
With the $13 coffees and then like the purple sweet potato breakfast bowls. And,
and so there's a battle for it. And they're like, there's protests because they know that's like, what is that? Like the beachhead is established.
Right. It's like putting that flag down and then everything else.
Always coffee. Jeans and coffee.
They're on the front lines.
Yeah, totally. And real quick, just one other thing I wanted to just say about, we were talking about the who is this for, this show, and its lack of sort of, catching the zeitgeist, because I do think it's just too soon for this. I think this show will go on to have a cult following of some kind, the more people talk about it and things like that. But I think for right now, it takes a very special viewer who not only is down for some grim portrayals, but also, for this groundbreaking nuanced darkness, but also, like we were saying, it's like part of it is holding a mirror, to ourselves in a lot of ways, because we're so in this culture right
we're
now.
so
To
in this.
millennials. Yeah.
Millennials were deep in there.
We're deep in it. Like, I'm watching this show and cringing because, not naming any names, but I'm seeing like, oh my God, I know that person, and I know this person, and I'm a little like that, and we're a little like that. And it's so uncomfortable to admit the last thing you want to be is a Dougie. You don't want to be an Asher, and you really don't want to be a Whitney. But
It's
kind of
been
are.
really hard for anyone to have this conversation too, without feeling like you're like, like a Trumper or something. People that to start a conversation about these things has been really difficult. They found a way to talk about it, to hold a mirror up to young millennials.
The nuances of it. Yeah.
Like you said, I think it's too
reflex. Can I bring up one thing that I was thinking about today? When Portlandia started 10 years ago,
right?
That's Gen X, right?
Right.
But the thing is, when Portlandia started, I went, "Hey, this is interesting. Let's make fun of the flat whites."
Yeah.
So the show starts, and I went, "Oh, wait a minute. We're supposed to love these people. We're supposed to like think they're cute and fun,
Adorable and."
Right, they're adorably like quirky alt people, and it was so toothless, that show. And so all I'm saying is like, and there's maybe something kind of Gen X about that.
That's interesting,
But I think what I'm saying is, Portland is a huge hit,
Yes.
And this show is so abrasive and like, think of the music,
Yes.
like harsh synthesizer tones,
and like discordant and just like
right. And what I'm saying is, it's just like no one here is cuddly the way that Portlandia depicted people. And they're kind of adorable, like flat white reality. So
it's
and of course aggressive. It's aggressively millennial and under too. Like this is not a boomer show. I don't think boomers are going to be.
No, they can't
do it.
I have a rule.
They don't even know where to start.
I have a hard and fast rule.
I'm not even
that
deriding them. It's just like
No, boomers do not get. I've never met a boomer who's understood Nathan or can even process what they're watching. It's like it's too contemporary in that they can't separate what is real about it and what isn't, and the commentary that it's satirizing is too
the discomfort.
It's and the discomfort. It's not their jam. It harshes
even
their
like Nathan
vibe.
For You is like there's some similarities between that and what Sacha Baron Cohen does. But like boomers can get down with Borat, but like Nathan is like too awkward, too much of a turnoff. They're like, why would I want to watch that guy for 20 minutes?
Well, he plays it too straight too. There's no like funny mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It doesn't go into parody, like, and that's and it's showing the like beyond not going to parody. It's showing like the scariest, darkest, most isolating moments of when you're alone and that part of yourself you don't want anyone to see. And it's like they're showing you that repeatedly in the show in moments when the characters are by themselves, and it's horrifying. It's
Oh my
That's
God.
what I picked up on in the second viewing. Even the artist character, like she gets her moment to stare blankly off. And
and I want to talk about that later. I love all
just
that.
to say like what you see, because there's some really great acting in the show, and we should get to the people, the characters.
Let's do it.
But like what you see is them staring off into the distance and seeing the calculation in their mind of how this conversation they just had went down, and how they really kind of let themselves down and their humanity down.
Exactly.
Like, wow, I just exploited this person. That wasn't fun. And yes, I'm up like a bunch of money, but like, what did I pay for that money?
Or I gave up my dignity to this person in the artist sense. Like, and it is interesting. Like, there's so many moments where the camera just lingers, and the scene, quote unquote, is over, and we're actually getting to experience the inner life, and that never happens.
It doesn't
in a TV
anymore.
Show.
In an art film, maybe, but
no,
it's an experimental 8-hour art film. Evan, sorry,
but it doesn't have roots in experimental film, because I will tell you, I was reading about this today. Nathan sent Benny a scene from Columbo as an inspiration for pacing on this show.
Yeah, and candid camera.
Yes, but the idea of but on Columbo, it was just a scene of Peter Falk, walking up to a phone and picking up the receiver and then using the rotary phone, all 7 numbers, you know,
and
which is challenging our modern way of processing content. This avalanche of constant content that people are obsessed with consuming 24 hours a day. And it's what's the new show? And it's all about like easily digestible narratives that we can just literally, it could like run through our bodies. And so all of a sudden we're being asked to like stop, and then the pacing is like so disjointed that it's doing that thing where it's challenging us to subvert our expectations.
Do we want to get into some other points about how this show is not being very well received and why?
Is there another one? Did I miss one?
Well, I was going to say that I know for a fact that there was a problem with having a big, like maybe the biggest female movie star right now, actress.
Sure.
In Emma Stone, because I was seeing a lot of like knee-jerk responses like the new Emma Stone thing sucks, it's boring, I don't get it, like this is dumb. And what the thing is you know, it's just like they're expecting product to be at like a movie star Emma Stone level, and this is so like beyond any expectation that anybody's you know acclimated to, you know. And so there's a definitely and then I think that traveled very quickly, and there was like a bad vibe with this show because it was disappointing Emma Stone fanatics. Yeah. And she's huge. Like, she just hosted SNL. And kudos to her for being about as big as you can be right now and doing such a challenging show for herself and us, all of us, you know.
And like the performance is so impeccable. And like,
and she's
that's
great.
Incredible.
Do we want to get into her?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we should.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I've never, like, her character Whitney is so fucking real, and I mean, first off, her performance in all of her facial expressions, you know, because it is sort of, because since the show thematically is about what we were talking about earlier, the artifice, the sort of facade, the fake facade of our world, and also who we are, she does such a good job of performing. You know, that fake phony, hi, you know, kind of thing. And she's so good at that. And you can also read everything she's thinking when she's hyper obsessed on, oh my God, Asher shouldn't be saying that. This person shouldn't be saying that. It's so fucking real into where we are right now. But also, she also plays this perfect vulnerability where she herself is absolutely terrified at the fact of anybody finding out who she really is. And so she's doing a really good job of balancing, playing fake and also those moments where you can tell as an audience that, you know, she is a husk of a person, you know,
she
beneath
lets
all
that creep through on her face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Every little flicker of expression is telling this like story that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's very rich. Just watching her face, you know, and how she navigates through everything. And the thing is, you know, we're talking about it's a world of BS, but also scheming.
Yes.
You know, it's very much a world. I don't know how you younger people do it. Like, it's like everyone is always thinking like, you know, like it's a fucking chess game as far as social intercourse goes. Yeah. You know, it's like, all right, here's all these assholes in this room. I got to be nice to this one, ignore that one, bond with this one, alienate myself from that one. So it's just like, it's exhausting. Yeah. And she's definitely that kind of archetypal character. And she's always trying to figure out, because that's the thing, we'll talk about each of them individually, but like, as far as scheming, I think that's one of the takeaways for me. She's mostly good at it. Nathan's character, Asher's really bad at it. You know, like he doesn't have good fake face, and he explodes in anger, right?
Oh, we'll
and then
that,
Asher, I'm sorry, and then Dougie is I don't know, he's
an amazing manipulator for sure.
He is a great schemer.
Yeah, he's an amazing
world-class
and a fantastic producer.
Yes, but I don't want to get stuck with those.
Sorry.
To stick with what I'm saying is to stick with her. I think there's BS, and then there's active passive-aggressive scheming at every moment, and there's never like a place where you just walk into a party and go like, I want to meet somebody, how you doing? It's like, it's transactional. What do you have for me? What can I do for you? Right?
Well,
and I think in terms of like the millennial, like we were saying, how she encapsulates perfectly this specific demographic of the millennial white woman in a perfect encapsulation that is, it should be in a fucking museum.
A bullion cube.
I'm like, I want to write a dissertation just on the characterization of Whitney and the evolution of the millennial woman and her like emerging adulthood into her late 30s, and like how culture has shaped the identity of that archetype, and how spot on they got this characterization, like even down, because like I am a millennial woman in my late 30s, so even the way that I can spot like the bag that she has, I know exactly where they got that, the shirt she's wearing to the party, the like everything that's calibrated in her toiletry case and the mud mask, like it's all so specific.
It's dialed in
because those accoutrements are all homogenized, because of the way that social media has branded all of this shit to inside the algorithms of these millennial women.
Especially for women,
that it's all you do is consume this stream of homogenized content that gives you signifiers of like what your identity is, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and because for like
that is supporting accoutrements.
Completely, and like what you're projecting and how you're constructing that identity, and it's so perfectly orchestrated because there's no separation between branding and who you are as a personal identity.
Yeah. One of the little thing is I've noticed is it's aging millennial women is I think that what they want to have is that cake and eat it too thing, where it's like I want to be virtuous and I want to feel like I'm a good person and not like, you know, like Trumpers or like my parents or boomers.
Yeah.
Like I'm a good person, but they also want to have creature comforts of the petite bourgeois.
Of course,
so they certainly want to have like, they want to be loaded.
They want to have money. They want to have fancy clogs.
They want to be rich and have all the little things that, you know, you get when you're rich, but they also want to be a good person. And, and you see that play out and how that's, there's a kind
and how do you really hold those two things?
Integrate them. Yeah,
you can you want to buy the $200 sleep mask and the and have that whole lifestyle, but then still be construed as socially conscious and
totally
virtuous and good,
right?
And not like a capitalist bourgeoisie dickhead.
Totally,
right.
I think
so afraid of being a Karen that you turn into a Whitney, basically. Right?
Well, it's not even. I don't know. Evan, did you want to say something else? Because
go ahead, respond to that. Then
I was going to say there is like an interesting evolution of like before the whole Karen thing. You know, like this started way before that. Like I think it's like when you look back, like I almost want to do a timeline and like a chart with photos of like the millennial woman, because like I am in that generation. Although I'd never on social media, so I was always very much like observing from the outside of how kind of like twisted.
Yeah, Rémy's never been on social media, which is pretty unreal.
Well, like I've never like had an Instagram or posted anything on Instagram, but I've seen it in my cohorts. I'm not trying to sound like on my high horse. It just was never something that like interested me. So like it was like there was this image right away when like in emerging adulthood that like when everyone got their Instagram accounts, it's like, okay, what am I going to curate? And at first it was kind of that like American Apparel, like, you know, skinny Terry Richardson model, you know, with the t-shirt, reading a Patti Smith book, eating like a hamburger. And it was like
punky underground.
And she was like kind of objectifying herself. Like it was the indie sleaze era. My good friend Collier actually had an amazing blog called Carefree White Girl, which was before anyone was even using that language, which is amazing. But then that sort of became out of vogue, you know, the objective, realizing it was kind of like they started to refine this like feminism, kind of the Jezebel feminism. Then you started sort of segue into, wait, I don't want to be objectified anymore. I'm going to empower myself. And then you sort of, it became a little bit girl boss, and then the wing, and it became all about like, we're feminists and we're empowering. But then all of a sudden it was like, that became very cringe when suddenly the new generation of Gen Z was coming up saying, listen, that's very monolithic. That's very white and very ignorant. All of a sudden, for the first time, that generation was feeling like, oh, I'm not at the center of the universe.
It got checked.
And like they never got checked before. They were always the centrality, like the centrality of their privilege, the centrality. And once that was checked, it became, oh, how do we pivot? Like, how do we adjust this image?
Wow.
And then they had to finally.
In the Trump era, I know I'm a good person.
Right.
Black Lives Matter.
And like even right before that, like there was a calibration before even Trump that was like, okay, you know, how do I adjust this image where I need to project that like I'm self-aware? Because the shittiest thing to be in this culture right now is not self-aware. I don't want to be one of these girl boss idiots.
Right.
So then all of a sudden it became about performative language and adopting performative attitudes, but while still, like you said, Tom, living the life of the bourgeoisie, which it has nothing to do with working class values or the values that they're espousing. Those values are, I do believe that the liberal educated women do believe in those ideas, of course. Like in theory, Whitney does believe in the things she says, and she thinks that like, you know, of course, colonialism is bad. But it's the fact is that her actions are not mirroring the values that she's espousing. So she's inauthentic.
But it's also, I mean, what you see in the show, getting back to the show and the characterization of Whitney is like, you constantly are seeing that the roots of her inspiration to take action is there's always a selfish motive because it has to align with like we're both great artists. You know, like,
I want to say
like
something.
It's
about
all
that.
threading the needle. It's like I want to be a great artist who's rich and who is socially aware.
It's all self-serving,
and I think and I'll just leave it with this. Everyone has to learn you can't do it all. You have to kind of pick. You can't. For some reason in modern life, because there's so much that can happen and the convenience of it all and the possibilities, you can't thread that needle. You can't quite do it all. You have to choose. And this is someone who is, you know, trying to do this thing that I would say is virtually impossible. And you see that played out because she's not doing it with genuine heart. So she's always going to be at a distance with the people she's trying to save.
Exactly.
She's not just going to go, hey man, what's going on? Who are you? Hi. Like, I'm a person, you're a person first.
Totally.
And then like, there's these social class things that are happening that are
it's very selfish,
like, I'm a person
focused.
It's not like it's almost like you should start talking to people like, oh, I have a kid and you have a kid and how's your kid and how's school?
Right.
You ever even overhear people talking?
Yeah.
And they're just talking about like their kids.
Humans talking.
Yeah, just right.
Like human beings, but the point is that it's all about how she can get her clout and so
well, that's all for the show. You know, mostly it's for the show. You know, it's like how can we make a flipping show, but it's a socially conscious flipping show.
Exactly. I think it's
like,
beyond that.
Her houses aren't even
in the name of the show.
The houses aren't even safe, really, or eco. You know, like they're threaded away from being not eco. You know, everything's for the show, and then you know, there's a really revealing moment. Like Asher's sort of just kind of going along with whatever she wants, you know. But like, there's a really revealing moment where he's saying the line he thinks she wants to hear. He's like, "What about Fernando's mom? You know, she's getting kicked out." And she's like, "Oh, look at you! You should care about his mom." And she kind of shows this horrible side of herself where she doesn't even care, you know, really.
Evan's dying.
He's dying.
Okay, just real quick because I want to before
Whitney,
we get too far. Just before we get too far
There's
off.
more.
No. There's one more thing about Whitney because Marcus was saying it was for the show. I think it's much farther than just the show. I think it's her own identity. It's for who she is, you know, to the outside world. And I think that's just the one other thing I wanted to say just really quick about social media is just this idea of like it's created. I think social media and this environment, and Whitney specifically, just to tie it to her, is it's created this kind of like even semi or full narcissism that I think more people are being afflicted with than they probably were before, you know, because everything is so driven by this fake persona that we are putting out into the world. It's like we are making our own little TV shows that everyone's watching and hopefully they like us, and our own little reality shows that we're sort of making, and that you know, so people have to, you know, so I think it's this desperation for everything you're saying, but I think it's going so far just to satisfy this own person, this fake image they want to make of themselves. And I think it's like, because our world is less, you know, organic, and us just, you know, talking to people and sort of organically developing an identity, you know, through activities and whatever, how we used to. I think a lot of it is algorithm pushed. And so it's this we're just being pushed a fake identity on sort of all directions. And I think this show does a really good job of just getting into that sort of exploring that and the narcissism.
Like co-opting other people's,
yes.
She's co-opting other people's identity to give herself more currency the whole time. And
she's seeking validation from, people of color or whatever to, so that she's to say like, I'm not a bad person, or like, I'm not a racist, or I'm an ally. She's seeking that validation from them. To make her, to assuage her guilt,
sacrifices whatsoever,
right?
Without making any sacrifices, but just
sort of
trying to use it.
Yeah, she's sort of.
As
it's also, sorry,
no, Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, Ray.
Well, just also to enrich. There's the inner drive, but then it's also like they've got this sort of real estate scheme going too. So it's the opposite of the goals, because they really are trying to flip that neighborhood and buy up as much land as they can. And make all these empty gestures that they'll pay someone's rent for a year, and then it's going to be gone, and they will have completely changed the community. So it is all they're sort of like the wolves in sheep's clothing almost.
Totally.
Yeah, totally. All right, we should move on because it's already been almost an hour. Okay. So
we got two more beloved characters.
Okay.
Here.
The last thing too, real quick before we move on about Whitney, that's amazing. She's the richest character. Is just the idea of the last little piece, and you touched on it a little bit, but it's so much of it is about this, is how she considers herself an artist. This idea that she constantly
plot.
Needs to be reminding people, especially her, Kara, who is an artist. And I think what you're saying, Marcus, about the validation, like this Kara character is sort of the key to her validation. If she can get Kara to see her as an equal, then she's then she's getting what she needs out of this whole thing.
And
getting Kara,
she knows if
she doesn't even care if she believes it. She wants Kara just to say it onto the TV.
Exactly.
Camera.
Yeah.
She wants to have that association. If she wants to create that association so that the image is that they're aligned, and it gives her more credibility. Right. And she's using her like a prop.
There are two levels though, like getting psychoanalytical, and maybe Evan was getting towards this. There's the clout, externally, publicly in social media, but she internally wants to feel like a good person and like a rich inner life, like
interesting
artist. You know what I mean? Like she wants to, but she knows that she's not.
Yes,
she's not.
So she's going to this crippled place where she knows that she's not an artist.
Let's talk about.
She's just kind of a scammer, and she's kind of scamming people and everyone in their life. But deep down inside, and that's what I think is the soul of the show. As I was saying before, everywhere the show goes right to the deep soul of everybody, and everyone is really broken inside. Yeah, because they cannot fill the chasm internally, although they are desperately trying, especially through the externalized clout of social media, and they can tell though that it's not working.
It's not working.
You know how like when you see like a millionaire is depressed, like Kurt Cobain killed himself. Yeah, it's like that scary notion where you get everything you ever wanted and you stop aspiring. Yeah, and you wake up one day and you go, I'm still unhappy.
It's not filling the void that you're trying to fill. And they kill
themselves. It's like it's that kind of energy.
And she's lonely, and she wants a friend too. And like that's a thing.
Love to have friends.
The basketball scene too, and like it's amazing. And that's when the show is like, you're like, this is fucking smart. Another level. It is. Because yes, we can excoriate people and analyze them and put them down. But then when we really look inside and see like, this is like, it's just lonely girl who has no friends and like wants to mess around and play basketball. And
you see her with any real friend?
No. And I noticed that today when I watched it. She has no friends in the show. And then she says like, oh, I want to document like this one part of the show that shows my life outside of Asher, because I do have a life outside of Asher. And you're like, oh, nope. You don't. You have to hire these people to show that.
And it's all shot like on a shitty C300 as well too, which is amazing.
Yeah, because they're like this. We're not going to use this. Yeah.
Okay. But let's not forget, which I've been trying to get in here, is about that the fact that she's stealing the concept for these houses from Doug Aitken, which is a brilliant creative choice on Benny and Nathan's. The idea that she's just going to wholesale
name drop him.
Totally wholesale.
Literally ripping off his entire aesthetic and try. So it's like a blatant, like,
it's a great
I'm
touch.
not even going to pretend.
Right.
Also that she's taking the blood money from her parents too.
No,
so.
Of course. And then
she has great guilt about that. The generational wealth that she has in her bloodline.
Because at some point then she uses Well, and then at one point she uses the blood money, the literal blood money, to pay off Kara, which is so insidious later on in the show. But then just one thing about the houses I was just trying to say is it is kind of a cool little visual thing that it sneaks into this show as you see a lot of distortions and reflections, of course, upon the house. But what's also really great about it is that it is kind of a weird thematic thing. I saw Benny talking about this, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Is that it's like this kind of, her presence in these neighborhoods as she's trying to be invisible. She's trying to have an invisible presence in these neighborhoods. And of course, the houses evoke that invisibility, but that's not the case at all, right? So anyway, we should move on. But
real quick, we talk about the visual thing with the house too. Just the brilliant titles. Of course, this show's got to have great titles too, right? And there's like a 5-second sting that's just kind of just sound, like atmospheric electronic sounds, and then the way that it's always filtered, like it looks like all of a sudden it goes to that distorted funhouse mirror kind of thing, which is the houses, and then it gets cut out.
It's like what's inside. It's like a Twilight Zone episode where when they have to put on the masks at midnight and they take off the masks and their faces reveal what's actually inside of their souls, and that's what it reminds me of every time you see her face distorted. It's like
that great shot of him putting on makeup too. Nathan putting on makeup.
Nobody has a better
like
blank
the Elephant Man.
Nobody has a better blank expression in the makeup chair than Nathan Fielder does, because he's been doing it now for like 7 years. Okay. Let's move on to Nathan.
Well, speaking of Nathan.
Yeah, let's talk about Asher. Perfect name. God, that name is so dialed in, too. Fuck. So Asher, just something I want to talk about with him. Obviously, I think, we were talking about the aggression and how he has this very dark anger deep within him. Obviously, it's hinted at throughout the whole show. Like Dougie talks about how he bullied him at camp that one time. And, obviously the micro penis and like all these sort of things that this character is saddled with that sort of, goes into humiliation and shame that's underneath the surface. But one thing is like, too, which is, I think, so real about his character is, you have Whitney, the one who's on top of the power dynamic in their relationship. Whitney is running the show. But then you have that very archetypal millennial male placater, which is that's a character you do not see that is so true and authentic to just things I've seen in my life, of somebody who is willing to essentially try and constantly placate. And even more, like, obviously, when in turn, when you do that, you even lose more of your own self-respect. And so it's just seeing that characterization is so well dialed in. And then, of course, they also give that character this explosive anger side, which you do see right in the first episode, actually. You see, of course, when they're, the person from the local news is interviewing them about what they're doing in the town. And then when the newscaster person keeps pressing on about Whitney's family, he's like, we're not going to talk about that. Are you looking at me? Excuse me. And then you see,
he's like overcompensating for his pathetic nature.
Overcompensating. And and Rémy, you said this to me when we were watching this recently, and I couldn't get it out of my head. That scene, and also the scene of Nathan or Asher when he's yelling at the people who are going to not buy the house because they wanted to install an air conditioner. Right. And he's like, you will not talk to my wife that way, or whatever he says. Dude, Will Smith slap.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking.
It really is. Because like,
something... your motherfucking mouth.
Yeah, but that made so many people uncomfortable, because it was like, what is the dynamic here that you would feel you need to prove this to this person? What is that?
And it doesn't look exactly like heroic.
No.
It actually just shows like...
pathetic, man.
Some kind of pathology is going on here. Like, it's... I don't know what they're expecting, like to seem chivalrous or something like that,
And to like seem... to match her power, I think. To that masculinity and kind of having that like, because he's kind of a meek, ineffectual character.
Yeah.
And I think in those moments he's trying to rise and be the man that he thinks she wants her to be.
I think it is more mannered than just becoming like a fitful outburst. Like, like it's not just like, it's both this. It's like partly he's, diffusing himself and it just comes to a boiling point. But also he is trying to, it's performative. Like so much of the show is he's like, I'm standing up for my wife. I'm supposed to be doing this. And he often gets mad in front of her too. That's another thing that happens, and that's when it comes off the most sort of tone deaf for me.
But the sign of the sign of the placating is so she does, but it's so well articulated. And one of the darkest things I've ever seen on television in this is the scene when she's in the bathroom and he's yelling at her through the bathroom after the news broadcast has aired about the casino, whatever's happening in the casino. And he's trying to defend himself that he's not, that he was doing the right thing. And then cut to the next scene, we learn that he has tape recorded their argument and he's actually making notes based upon what he should do differently next time in order to better satisfy her. That is darker than almost anything that I can think of.
Yeah, to even come up with that idea, like of living in that prison of insecurity where you're trapped in trying to be someone else for some
you don't
other
feel
person.
Comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Because
it feels like he's so stuck on her. It's related to his his micro penis and his kink and stuff that she he's got this cuckolded kink too.
Well, she's out of his end, kind of
Yeah, so she's kind of okay with that stuff
because they keep their hooks on the out of the league girl.
Definitely.
Right, but she's also kind of okay with him, and they're committed to each other, so he doesn't want to lose that. He's so desperate to not lose her. I'll do whatever. He's like, I'll do whatever. I want what you want. He said that. He actually says that line in the show, and all of his actions, show that. And then I think it's like, at some point, that's a very humiliating existence, and you have to be that women want a man or whatever, so I'm going to try to man up and I would take a bullet for you, and then that's always met with further derision from her. He even gets she goes way harder on him when he tries to man up in those moments.
And she puts him down even more.
And it's hopeless. It's such a just I can just see it, it's such this characterization of this power dynamic is really something I don't think I've seen in anything else yet.
No, and it's something that's so true and real. Like even in those fights,
is this millennial related too? Would you guys say?
I think it is.
This male archetype.
I've seen this dynamic a lot. Where it's like the man is suddenly, like you said, kind of the out of the league girl. She has all these values. She has these things that she's very strong about, and he's realizing I have to kind of almost conform to what she. And how can I be all these things at once? Because it's not really who I am.
Right.
I have to be authentic. I have to be, not strong per se, but I also have to share her values. And a lot of times it's like they're dressing in these clothes that don't fit them, that have been kind of bought for. He's wearing this Comme des Garçons sweatshirt with the little hearts, and I'm like, oh god,
that is not something basically he would have bought.
It's a constant, you're constantly self-aware of, you can't just be flawed, I'm fucked up and you're married to me and that's that,
No.
I can't even imagine being in that.
No.
Because she's trying to engineer him. You can imagine when they first met, what he dressed like. He was working, for contracting for the casino. Right. He's probably just wearing his, dorky Nathan Fielder, Adidas sneakers with the khakis, and then she comes in and is like, okay, this guy's gonna adore me. I can do this. Her narcissism is being fed. Her narcissistic supply is being fed by his adoration. So you were saying, Marcus, as much as she can't fucking stand him in so many ways, he's fulfilling a need for her.
Well, and also she just real quick, Marcus, she needs also to make sure that if she's going to be with Nathan, it's someone that she can mold, but also mold into something that's not going to be embarrassing for her publicly, and that's going to fit with the image that she wants to create. So it's
just a clone of her identity, basically. It's just like you know, it's,
but
there's no singular identity that he has. It's not two different people meeting together. It's someone sculpted by her.
Yes,
because the power dynamic is rather extreme, actually.
Yeah, it's extreme. And in the fight, which is the first time we really see them fight, which is interesting, when he does really stand up for himself in that moment, and she then challenges him and kind of trying to calls him a racist or something, and then he's like, that's not fair, and like it's very real in that moment when he's actually desperately trying to express himself and say, like, I have no voice, like, you're not letting me have a voice, this is not fair. And it's like so real.
I could say some things that you said were not very could have been misconstrued as racist if I were to say that, you know?
And it's all about policing, like her thing is all about policing.
Can I get into one little tiny thing just to exemplify all of this? When she's like, let's do the Green Queen, and every Green Queen needs his ... and you would think it would be king. It's like court jester. So they say like the Green Queen needs her court jester, and then you're waiting ... for him to be like, hey, push back, like, whoa.
Nope.
No, he goes like, hey, I'm juggling at the sushi, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's broken. Because he's like playing ball with like, I'll be your court jester.
I'll be the clown. Like
it's truly grotesque. And I'm not saying this in the sense of like male ego, but just human being ego.
Yeah. Being degraded.
Woman, no man should be like gleefully like, I'm a joke.
Yeah.
And this speaks to what happens to him at the end. I mean,
it does.
This when you follow his whole trajectory through the show of his kind of like heart being broken in so many ways by this person he adores, just humiliating him and degrading him. And then he has to make the choice because he knows he thinks he can't live without her. And so he finally makes the choice to completely shed every sense of his own authenticity and become this fake sort of Stepford wife, body snatched version of what she wants, and then ultimately it like destroys him. You know, ultimately destroys him.
Wow. All right, we should keep
got a fun character. If we want
fun show.
Okay, I need to get a drink. I'll be back.
This is killing me. This is
a fun comedy.
Let's wrap this up.
So, all right. So then Dougie.
Dougie's a little breath of fresh air.
He is.
I'm laughing already.
He is.
When you say his name,
Dougie actually is the comedic. He's dark and does some reprehensible things, of course, in the show, but there is a lot of comedic relief, at least, and I think that's probably one of the things for mainstream audiences to grab onto with this character is the idea of a very sort of sad, pathetic, like, you know, cheesy rock kind of archetype of a guy who's kind of
fist pumping.
Benny said it was actually influenced by Johnny Depp, which I can really see. He was watching like a
wannabe.
He was watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial during the same time frame was going on when he was watching HGTV, and he noticed that at one point, like, Johnny left the courtroom and like raised his hand or something, and there were all these rings on it, and he sent that picture. God. Or I guess it must have been later on in the process. He sent that picture to the costume person and was like, "Whatever's going on that hand." I need this for the character, and he said
the leather band watch and all that rings and
Guns N' Roses T-shirt.
Even outside of Johnny Depp, though, I feel like we've all met somebody like that looks like a Dougie, right?
And it's so outdated
deadhead
too,
shirt, and then like a
totally like kind of what's that like kind of a Fred Siegel like expensive
but like
Zeppelin
trashier
shirt.
right?
Well, but sometimes they have like those
kind of
like,
Melrose.
I was gonna say
Melrose.
10 years ago, Melrose.
It is more
Melrose
like
Avenue
to me,
head shoppy.
No, but he has
like
like
he's
kind
so
of a
not
designer.
Cool.
He has sort of like a designer version of a Led Zeppelin, like it's like a distressed, you know,
he might aspire to a John Varvatos.
I think that's what I'm saying.
It is a little bit like Online Ceramics, which we can talk about later, which is that Deadhead T-shirt company.
But he's not as cool as that, even.
By the way, but there's a little bit of that.
Because I feel like Whitney's she's more there, and then he's kind of this weird, outdated artifact that's sort of
way outdated.
He looks like a buffoon.
And obviously
Dougie, his name.
Dougie is an incredible name too. They dialed that in perfectly too. And so it's like, you know, obviously, you know, I'm sure that there are producers, especially in reality TV, who are Dougie-esque. You know, the idea of somebody who is kind of trapped in doing this kind of second-rate, shittier sort of job, and they want to aspire to be something and more than what they're doing. And I think he obviously exemplifies that perfectly, because in the first episode, it's like he gets so disinterested in what they're making. It's just like, oh, this is so boring. It's so boring. Yeah. And then and that's a perfect sort of arc for him to try and seep his influence in. And what happens over the course of the whole show is pretty insidious, because he is then now moving in to be the person that is driving the wedge in between Asher and Whitney. You know, he's manufacturing a lot of this.
Sleeping together.
Well,
I don't think so.
I don't think so
either.
I don't think so. But I think there's tension there, and I think, but he is the one that's really going in there, I think, fucking shit up. And Benny
it's almost like a Mephisto type, like he's kind of behind pulling the strings.
Yes. And
he's got a history of bullying Asher, like you said, too, all the way back to camp. So
the point where Asher doesn't even call it bullying. You know,
just joking around.
Yeah,
right. You guys
just joking around. Yeah, he's just joking around.
He's like putting dating apps on his phone.
I know.
He steals Asher's phone, puts Tinder on it, and well,
not even a different. It's a different kind of brand.
And he's able to play it off as a joke, and Asher just sort of rolls with it.
Yeah, he wants to also make this is his meal ticket for whatever reason. He's seeing this show that they're making, that it could even says in the beginning, it could be a breakout hit show. And he thinks in order to do that, you have to.
Well, he's at a low point in his life too, because his wife, the situation with his wife dying. So he's like, and no one talks to him anymore.
Yes,
he's been like,
no friends.
He's been excised from or exercised.
They were all her friends. He said.
Yes.
And he's so lonely too.
He's so lonely. Every scene, this is something else I noticed in the second viewing, all the little moments where he tries to hang out with Asher, and Asher says he's busy. In the casino, he's like, hey man, want to get a drink after work? And he's like, no, I'm busy. He's like, oh, okay, cool.
At least Asher's married, like Dougie's very alone. He doesn't hang out with the crew or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's so twisted though too, because he wants to hang out with Asher and be his friend, but he's also secretly filming him, secretly recording him. Like he's sticking around New Mexico longer secretly to kind of work on this alternate cut or whatever he's doing, you know.
He's twisting the knife the whole time.
But
he's like, why are you still here? Like in the episode 2 or whatever, he's like, oh, you're still around? He's like, I got some stuff cooking, you know.
Yeah.
But also because he's lonely.
Yeah.
Like, and he has nowhere to go. And Asher's like,
what person looking for a friend.
Yeah, he's like, Asher's like, what are you doing?
In this impossible landscape of manipulation.
And then Dougie just drives around and goes to these ridiculous shops and cries in his bed,
like
drinks with children,
because the guilt of killing his wife, like, is he can't.
Like he buys,
not stopping him from drinking.
He's buying those.
Put the rum in the Coke in a Coke glass.
Oh yeah, and he's buying booze for like underage kids to like hang out with them too. Really fucked up. But real quick,
he's got a repellent aspect to his personality.
Well,
too,
he's got Arrested
keeping everybody away.
He's like a 15-year-old.
Definitely.
Yeah,
right. You don't want to. Yeah.
Okay, so Benny, in talking about his own character, sort of calls him the character exposer. He's the guy that's, you know, really as a function in this show going in and really trying to pry the reality, as we were saying, you know, Benny being influenced by HGTV, trying to find out what the reality is, or the truth, in the reality. That's kind of that's Dougie's role in this show, is to sort of find the truth within this phony facade of these people that we're seeing, even when the cameras are off. And let's not forget that Dougie is the one, I think it's episode 6 or 7 where the tide really changes, and he's the one, I think it's episode 6, he's pushing and pressuring Whitney to tell her own story. You know, when remember, he perfectly manufactures a very shitty milquetoast edit of the show. He does
a bad cut,
intentional
bad cut. That's lifeless, soulless. She picks up on it. It's a great,
literally talking about paint drying.
And they're able to communicate that that's what he's doing in that one look. Tom screenshotted it and sent it over to him, where he's just side eyeing her to watch her reaction, and it's one eye looking over, and you can tell that's what he's doing.
He's pushing her like, this is how boring this could be.
It's brilliant. But that's also what's interesting. Benny Safdie said as well that he wanted to make the character look so ridiculous so that as an audience, you make assumptions
Yes.
about him originally, and then it sort of tests the way that we assume, like this weird, dumb Melrose dressed head shop guy, and then slowly it's like he is the one turning the screws. He is so much more than really what he appears.
Yeah,
He's sort of brilliant
as he looks.
and he's brilliant at his job, like in terms of the manipulation that he's doing.
Well, as we said, he's the master manipulator of all of them. It's like she's like okay on a good day, Asher's bad, but Dougie's a master manipulator.
He is. So
and Dougie knows that Whitney's
she has to manipulate through money. You know, she has to pay the jeans. She's got to hire this guy. She's throwing her money around to manipulate everybody.
Yeah, she's not very good interpersonally manipulating.
Oh.
Not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously, just real quick, my favorite Dougie moment in the entire season, one fucking season, is when he is. I guess he's going out on a date with that girl. And they're out and they have dinner and they drink, and then he's in the car and he's like, I'm over the limit right now, so I'm going to pull over. And it's so
we're gonna walk home.
We're gonna walk.
So dark. Oh my God. But very funny. And he is incredible at inhabiting this character. It's a very oh my God. It is
big respect to Benny Safdie as an actor. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, he did an incredible job.
I was very impressed. Yeah.
He inhabits that person. You're like, this is Dougie. This is not an actor.
And he says to put a bow on it. He says to put the bow on it. As soon as those rings go on, he fully is a different person. It's like,
can we talk just like, I know I mentioned this briefly, but like when you see Dougie after he calls Nathan on the speakerphone in the car and says like, oh, do you want to hang out? Yeah. And Nathan's like, oh, we have a busy day. We can't. And then it cuts to Dougie and you're seeing him through the window in the motel room. And you see the shopping bags and he's just on the bed and just breaking down. And I mean, it's amazing. It's the pain of that moment.
Right. You know what it is? It's the kind of Grace Note moment that doesn't work in like Magnolia, but it works here.
Magnolia.
It's what PTA is often trying to do.
I know. We have to get our one Magnolia reference in per episode. But the thing is that, too, about those shopping bags, I did also spot, again, Benny, I've been watching a lot of his Q&As. He did mention that somewhere that they shot a scene. It's a deleted scene. Hopefully we'll see it at some point.
Deleted scene.
There's a deleted scene of him going to shopping and buying all those clothes and putting on those ridiculous clothes, and basically just for the purposes of seeing if the clerk that's helping him is just essentially like, yeah, it looks great, man. Like he's just there for the the satisfaction, you know. And it's very dark and it sounds very funny, but. Wow. Anyway, I thought we could I just want to rapid fire some scenes here. Yeah. Just talking about episode 1, it's so rich. I mean, talk about Dougie. I mean, right in the beginning, we're establishing this reality TV show that's being made. And of course, Dougie's first move is putting those fake tears on the woman's face.
God, this older woman, like blowing something.
Yeah, blowing menthol into her
menthol to make her eyes red. It's just well, then it's interesting because in that moment you're seeing how Whitney is viewing that too.
Yes.
So it's like there's all the different levels of what we were talking about with like the exploitation, and she's aware that that's wrong. Like she doesn't think, oh, that's okay, and she knows, oh,
we're not those people.
We're not those people. And like, that's her constant thing. It's like, I'm the good white person. I'm the good liberal. Like, I'm not one of, and it's always distancing herself and not implicating herself, even though she is and committing the same amount of harm, but just not as blatantly as Dougie's doing it. And Dougie's doing it in a more authentic way because he's not really pretending.
It's like old school showbiz. It's just like, this is product.
But guess what?
For the marketplace.
Guess what, though? When she's disgusted by Dougie and his tactics, you know, in those early episodes, but guess what? As soon as she gets a whiff that Kara is sort of schmoozing with Dougie and finds Dougie amusing, then she starts to find Dougie amusing and sees him in a different light, which is what you need for her to make that turn halfway through where, you know, she's going to start turning on Asher, which is like fucking crazy. Okay, then
I thought that scene with Kara too, just to real quick, is also to help us see that Kara isn't just a cold person, like that she can have a fun, like flirty relationship with somebody, and just joking around and enjoy. She seems to actually enjoy Dougie's company, but that's like compared to Whitney, who she's just always kind of coldly. Like I think that gives us a moment to see Kara outside of Whitney's relationship, and understand that she's
I still
not
don't
just
trust anybody, and I'm sure Kara has her objectives.
Yeah,
in that because like she's flirting with Dougie, like of all people.
Dougie,
she's like an art chick, like that's
she's a kind of a cool hip art chick girl.
It doesn't go very far, I don't think. But yeah,
did we talk about the art show with the turkey?
He negs her and says like she's ugly.
She's ugly.
No, we didn't talk about her art show.
We didn't talk about smoking. That's gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very corny, like pickup artist, like
right.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Sure.
Totally.
So before we get into the episode 2 art show, obviously episode 1 we didn't even talk about this yet. It's which is insane. Is the curse? I mean, this is the like
we
MacGuffin.
forgot to talk about the curse.
Well, it's kind of the MacGuffin in a way of the series because again, and this is sort of Nathan's origin story in terms of what he's bringing to the table. The story goes when he first moved to America from Canada, he allegedly was on his way to get a new cell phone or something, and he didn't have any cash on him, and somebody asked him for money, on the street, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I don't have any," and and then the person was like, "I curse you," and put a curse on him, and then he went and he kept thinking about it, jammed his head, and then he went to an ATM, he got out some money and gave it to her, and he was like, and he's like, "Wait, is the curse lifted?" And she said, "Yes, it is," and so the curse was lifted. Happened. But when he told that to Benny was like, "Well, what if you didn't see her? What if you didn't find her again?" And you're always, and this whole thing kind of fucks up your head, and that's obviously what's happening here throughout the whole series. But there's a lot more to it. It is kind of the MacGuffin because obviously all this stuff is not some weird.
I mean, it's the name of
voodoo.
the show, but. And actually,
but then the final episode, it's like you think it's the MacGuffin the whole time, kind of, right?
Like it has multiple meanings.
You're right.
No, he says himself, "I am the curse."
Yeah, he says, "I am the curse."
Yeah.
So I don't need a curse. Like I am the bad person.
Right,
but also I think that speaks to the idea of like sort of like these fables, like the Monkey's Paw, or like the Stephen King book, like Thinner, where there's like the parable about a curse or an object that then is a test for whether or not you're a moral and good person. Right. And if you pass that test, you won't be cursed. But if you don't pass that test, you're fucked.
Right.
And like those things always stuck in my head when I was a kid. Whenever I read those fables, or like you're walking through the woods and an ugly troll comes up to you and says like, "Fair princess, may I have your help?" And if you reject the troll, like whatever, but if you say I'll help you, then it turns into a beautiful prince and then your dreams come true. So it's this idea of testing. The show is all about what does it mean to be good? How do we test what's good? What's our guilty conscience telling
us? If we want to jump to the very end, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction might be like, well, there's the curse playing out. He's got reverse gravity and he's going to outer space. But I thought about it, and maybe that's the best fate for him, and maybe it's not even a bad thing, because I was also thinking it kind of reminded me of like the what's the word, the Rhapsody. No, the Rapture. The Rapture.
The Rapture, yeah.
The Rapture is this weird notion by Christians where all of us heathens are stuck here on earth, but all the righteous people start floating up into the sky to God.
And he also has that bloody stigmata thing happen to him earlier where he's like Jesus, he's got the nail on his palm.
With the girl in the yard,
Wow.
So what I'm saying is it could be like he's the only righteous one, and all these other people are earthbound, even though their pregnancy.
I can see that.
No, and so what I'm saying is because he does he's trying in the last episode, and he basically makes this huge offering, and he truly does the thing we talked about earlier. He doesn't want to be hypocritical and have everything, have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
He's going like, here's a $40,000 house to virtual strangers. You need this house more than we need $40,000. Yeah. And she's not so into that, but he really offers that with a full heart. Am I wrong? He makes a good deal.
Well, I think it's something that's interesting when we cut to that moment in the last episode where she's pregnant and we see them at Shabbat dinner, and he's completely, like I said, almost done the body snatcher, like Stepford Wives moment. It's almost like the moment in those horror movies where like the person's authentically themselves, and then Body Snatchers, they're a different, and it's really heartbreaking because you empathize with Asher in his struggle to be who he himself, and then all of a sudden he's then completely body snatched. And like it reminded me, because the show also does have supernatural influences and horror influences in the tone that it feels like a horror movie, but it's a horror movie of like the soul. It reminded me of Body Snatchers thematically as well, where in the 70s version, like you guys talked about, it was about like the hipness of being this like San Francisco hippie, and everyone was kind of on the same trip, and it was kind of this brainwashing thing that people were conforming to something that used to be counterculture, which has kind of happened with like the Whitneys of the world, like something that was kind of counterculture became homogeny and conformity, and it kind of snatched people's souls, groupthink. And then because he knew if he didn't give over to it, he'd lose her. And he said, if I ever lose you, like I'd be nothing and I'd float away and everything would be upside down.
Yeah, he does say that.
And so he foreshadows that.
I think maybe this is bullshit talk time, like, and I'll shut up and we'll get back to wrapping up the show. But just maybe he almost accidentally stumbles on a virtuous act that does have him ascend to heaven. Because he went too far. Because he basically, how can I put it? He cashed the check that everyone's just writing and bounces, like her, like, lip service. Like, oh, let's be nice to the people of color. And he's like, well, why don't we do something really nice to these specific people of color and change their lives for the better and walk away.
I see
and
that.
It's not even on. It's not even on our show.
Right? And she's kind of like, really?
So he might have stumbled by trying to be good in her kind of hive mind thinking. He goes too far and actually transgresses into a place of actual kind, like sacrifice. Like,
and he says you have to go to extremes.
And then God noticed it, and then said, you're going to heaven and all these awful people are going to be stuck together.
And they're cursed on earth.
Tom's theory right now.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like it, actually. I mean, I don't have anything personally against it, but I'm just saying, like, I think like the reaction, you can't just take it away from the reaction of Abshir receiving the house, and he's sort of like distrustful of them, He's like, well, when do I get the money, or can you give me the, and Asher was videotaping it, showing like, so you can relive this moment, and he gave it to her as like a model house so she could always remember. It was still him sort of like, I don't think he's grown, because I think he's still putting on the artifice of what Whitney wants. There was something that in the penultimate scene the penultimate episode, the final scene of the penultimate episode, when Dougie shows him the Dougie cut of the film and makes Asher look like a total jerk. And Asher gets pissed and leaves, and then he immediately comes back in and he's doing this clap thing and he's like, put it back in. There's something about that performance there. I didn't quite believe that he was being sincere in that moment. He was being Asher again, like telling her, he's like, I'm going to devote myself to you, baby. From here on out, it's going to be me and you, He's still being that guy. And I think the house is sort of like that huge version of that gesture. And it is a huge, it's all to glorify their relationship or whatever. I mean, it's in order to get her to stay with him that he did this magnanimous act.
Desperation.
I'm just saying that the material result, whatever the inspiration is, did result in these people owning their own home, which would have not otherwise happened. And that's
I have another slate theory.
For what
do you mind if
reason,
I go?
though? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ray. Then I have one too.
Another theory, just in terms of how, how it foreshadows when Dougie says, like, what would you do if you lost her? Or he basically said, I would have nothing and my world would be turned upside down and I'd go off in oblivion or something to that
That's what
effect.
I was going to say. I was going to tell you exactly what he says.
And I think what happens is with the pregnancy, for so long, she's so resistant to it because she doesn't want to be tied to this man and she doesn't want to be with this man. And he's obsessed with owning her, possessing her, having a little him inside of her, that he wants that so badly because it will tether them together. And I think that there's a moment that happens when she's pregnant and it's after Shabbat and they're sitting there in bed. And I think in her mind, she makes the decision that she's going to let him go. And I think in a psychic...
guess what happens the next morning?
And then in a psychic way, he's then released because she's going to have something else that creates that narcissistic thing for her, and she doesn't.
Baby
need
replaces.
it replaces him, and she doesn't need him anymore.
Yeah.
And then
I was also thinking.
Remember the evil, creepy horror movie face on when she's after having the baby, and she's in the hospital, and she's like, "That's like a horror movie. That's crazy."
Let's not forget that
and
this
a
is
horror pregnancy too.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
Let's not forget that, you know, him floating up into the sky is intercut with the baby being born. I mean, there's obviously something that they're definitely saying with that. But I just wanted to fill in a little blank that what you were saying, Rémy, because in episode 8, just 2 episodes before the last one, the foreshadowing of this moment is, I mean, these episode 8, 9, and 10 are really truly something. But in 8, it's when Asher finally sits down for Dougie's camera and he interviews him long form about his relationship with Whitney. And he describes her having a connection with the universe, you know, so it's a little fun foreshadowing I picked up on the second watch. And Dougie was like, you know, what would life be like without her? Yeah, I don't know, like in a crazy upside down world is how he puts it.
Crazy, crazy
you know, and it's like, so that they definitely had fun with that, of course, but foreshadowing. But
like,
I mean,
he like I think Marcus, what both of you guys, it's all a combination of these things. It's like he has surrendered himself and he's gone so far, but no matter how far he goes, like she's like, she doesn't want him, and he's never going to live up to her.
I know, and I also noticed too, real quick, and then we should move on to wrapping it up. But the scene where she gets mad at Asher is, of course, because he held the cell phone up to the pottery in the little thing, right? Yeah. But then I noticed in the last episode when he's doing the Shabbat prayer with the challah and everything, she has her cell phone out right at that moment as well too, and so
she's been performing Judaism this whole time. It's all about she excoriates people for appropriation and performative cultural consciousness, whatever. And she's doing she didn't give a shit about being Jewish. She's just performing an identity because she's so devoid of having a cultural identity,
her own identity,
her own. Yeah. And meanwhile, this guy's a Jew and he has his own shit and he's a normal dude, and let him be a fucking normal guy.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
I think that a friend of mine had a fun theory too that you know, like he called me the day after the episode and was talking about this, and which I think ties into the white guilt, you know, white privilege aspect of the show. Yep, is that like, you know, they're in this community, they're trying to make these invisible homes, you know, and he sent me that online ceramics T-shirt that says it's for this show, and it says "Cease to Exist" is a huge tag on the back of the show. And it says
that was a Charles Manson
it says
song.
Invisible Homes. It is the Charles Manson song, yes. The Beach Boys did.
That's right.
So it says Invisible Homes, and it says our homes are so efficient, it's like you're not even here. Ooh. You know, so it's like, I think the way it could be, you know, if you're trying to do good things for this community, what's the best thing you could do except for just remove yourself?
Get the fuck out of this community.
So it's like the ultimate gesture.
The ultimate absolution.
That's true. That's true.
It's Earth.
We don't need you to get your fucking business and our land acknowledgements and our shit. We don't need that. We can do this on our own.
I just want her to be the one then that is floating away.
but can we also?
He's just doing what she wants. What he thinks she wants.
But the house. Can we talk about how the house? It's kind of poltergeist. Like that's another kind of horror where like the house it turns against Demon Seed. I love Demon Seed.
I love that that's a rationale. He thinks like, well, it's the reverse pressure.
You know,
like.
Can we actually discuss the filmmaking of the final scene?
Oh wow,
the gravity reverses, just like that's
so
not
well
easy
done.
to do. And
so
I was
well
starting to. I didn't think too much, but I was getting a little distracted in the second viewing of like the mechanics of how they did it, and his great physical acting.
So
and how
good.
Truly, that is horror movie time.
Yeah.
Just clinging to that tree.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on the tree. I'm on the tree.
It's
and like,
amazing.
or when the guy says, you know, like I'm going to pull you out from the the carport or whatever.
Yeah,
and then,
that's the best.
The
awning or whatever.
It's like some of the best horror imagery I've seen in a while.
It is.
Well, and the house is turning against them, and it's all the things that they tried to construct, and all of that is like the same thing as the funhouse mirror image that the house shows. It's like suddenly all that darkness is it's suffocating them and just kind of destroying
That is
them.
something that we would see in like a 70s, and we know how Benny loves his 70s films. That is something we would see in sort of like consumerist horror film, from the 70s.
Totally.
Now
like
this
Demon
modern Demon Seed, right? Like this.
It's
this
very
modern,
Demon Seed and the Entity, and
you're right.
And we're all. But Poltergeist was also a comment on developments and indigenous cultures being erased, and all of a sudden the house is fighting back, and the fucking graves are coming out, and that's why that's so. I don't know, that ending was amazing.
Okay, we talked about the Asher floating off into space and Whitney giving birth, but I think my favorite ending moment was seeing Dougie break down and cry there.
Agreed. Inconsolable.
Inconsolable, and then just that's what makes me accept that the curse is real. Whatever that little girl did.
Yeah,
there's some real magic curse, and he realizes it at that moment. Feels responsible for it. Yeah, and that's why he's like breaking down for his manipulation. For he started the curse in motion by making him go talk to her, by trying to manipulate Asher all along. He's caused this snowballing of events and realizes that, and he's finally taking responsibility for his. He killed his wife basically in a car crash, but we always see him several times not owning up to it. Like, hey, so I killed my wife the first time I was behind the wheel. It wasn't my fault.
Right.
And it's like, so this is him doing it again. Right. With his reckless behavior,
he caused so much
causing
harm.
somebody else to die.
And so both deaths are hitting him right there on the ground.
Yeah.
Hitting him right there, and he's breaking down, crying, and then the next time we see him, he's talking to someone being like, yeah, my friend just floated off into space. He's like, he's using that narrative story.
He's already back. He's already back.
There is
it just
something.
took him a minute to be a human being.
Yeah, there is something about that moment and just the way it's edited and what's going on, and there is like a kind of dreamlike, just feels like the artifice to it. Like, I don't want to compare it necessarily to the ending of The Sopranos, but you know how the ending of The Sopranos feels so off. There's something
like
that
dreamlike. You mean
dreamlike and off? Not just the fact that there's a guy floating into outer space, okay, but just the idea of the cutting.
I know what you mean.
Of what's happening in that moment, and especially with Dougie and just like how rapid pace it is, because that show has never had that pace or that sort of amount of action in it. So it's very jarring to see these characters in a moment sort of like that.
The whole last episode, I mean, as soon as it starts with Rachel Ray, I was like, as soon as that kicked in, I was like, we're not seeing any of these.
Speaking of The Sopranos,
ends tied up. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I immediately knew we're not going to see those things come to fruition. Right. And again, talk about subverting expectations of the audience. We're going to open with a fucking 10 minutes of Rachel Ray and fucking Big Pussy.
It's very David Lynch, the Return. It's very Twin Peaks, The Return.
It is.
Where that never gives you what you want, but then it hits your dark
which
spot.
is also, I think, like Lynch was using that form to talk about narrative television too.
Yes.
Like you're expecting Cooper to come back right away, and then they don't even bring him back for 20 episodes.
He then says there are no heroes, basically, about Cooper.
Right.
Cooper is our hero, in our consciousness, and it takes that away from you and takes away the comforts of what TV does to us. Yeah, it's place of comfort.
And there's a lot of red herrings set up in this show. A lot of questions, the guy. There's Fernando with the gun. You think that situation's going to come to a head,
Yeah.
There's the mystery of who left the chicken on the sink.
Penne and the chicken. Oh, can we talk about
that?
There's
the lady who's who her hair falls out while she's talking to Whitney, and she looks all kind of
okay.
Suspicious. There's crew members walking around in Abshir's house. There's all of these mysteries left on the table, that were setting you up to think that something was going to happen, and then just whatever. We know it's completely right turn.
Okay, hold on. We have to just because you brought us there. It's a perfect segue.
Then we should probably wrap it up after that.
We will, but it's a perfect segue to just talk Lynch, You're talking David Lynch, and then now we're talking about this amazing scene in episode 6, which is the fire station scene here, where somebody's left the chicken by the
raw chicken.
Someone's left the chicken by the sink in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's gross.
Man, but that's such a fire walk with me moment, right? It's such a fire walk with me moment. Not only just to have something like a visual like that, like, you know, there's like creamed corn, you know, and like the
Garmonbozia,
the Garmonbozia scene. But like in this, but you also have the scene of reviewing it on the security cam, which is also very fire walk with me. You know, like
and also
David Bowie scene.
It's a modern version of Blow Up. You know, kind of Antonioni film.
Yeah. I was thinking that too.
Like, who's getting lost in like
in the mystery
something and looking for something, you know, and the guy's like, what exactly you looking for, Chief? You know, the guy who's operating the
so crazy.
It's funny too, because it's what we're doing watching the show too, looking for something meaningful. You know,
totally.
And it's all like psychic torture is really what it is. Like,
okay, I'm gonna come in here as to steer the ship here. I just want to. Can we just rapid fire, just really quickly, just a couple of moments that just deserve a quick shout out, and then wrap it up?
Go for it.
Okay. Episode 3 has again, like, I guess the real MacGuffin is the taking the chicken out of the penne, which is insane, but really one of the best acting scenes, and also just a great mode of writing, a great moment of writing in this show is the sort of the big moment in episode 3, which is them recreating taking her turtleneck off, her tight shirt off.
Did I not text you about that? Like,
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Like,
it's really stunning.
It's stunning.
Says everything.
It says everything you need to know. It says everything you need to know about what we've been saying. This idea of trying to manufacture their relationship to the outside world, and not living in the moment, and just all it's incredible. And the fact that then again, right at the peak of it, they turn over and the cell phone is still recording. Great thing. We didn't talk about this. Episode 4, Tom and I have said this 100 times to each other, and
of course,
texted, and you know, we were walking around my house saying this to each other. Yeah.
That one punched me in the stomach, man.
Oh my God. That was hard.
That's one of the great moments of television. Because I knew, okay, if you'll indulge me. So it's like, filmmaking is genius here, because the camera is fixed on him as the 5 people deep preceding him, unseen, are doing a thing like a hot potato or whatever, doing something stupid, or it's like, alrighty then, you know, they're doing these things. And he's just staring, and again, it's that, like, you see the clock work in their mind, you know, and you just see him like, oh my God, come up with something, almost having a panic attack, like, oh my God, that's the next guy before me, and just he goes like, and it's so unsettling. Everything is brilliant because the instructor just goes, okay. You know, there's a brief like civil pause, like that happened. Of course, no one laughs. But Nathan goes from going ew, grotesque face to he thinks he might have nailed it.
Yep.
You know, and he kind of like goes smile for like 2 seconds.
He goes,
and then he immediately reads the room and is like, and just like that went worse than I thought it would. 100% brilliant.
I wonder how many different versions of that they had to do until they landed on.
That's what I was gonna say.
Like how many options did he give them? You know,
you want one more with more ew to ew, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. like let's incorporate ears now, like. Because what I'm saying is, it's like you have the suspense as a viewer of knowing, well, he's gonna fuck this up. Like this is gonna go very, very badly. You know, because you just know the character and you see him dreading being the next person. But you didn't know exactly how it would go, and it was better than I could have ever dreamed.
Dude, no, that's what I'm saying.
It's not. I swear to God, I love this. It's like it's not based on a thing, so it's like unrelatable. It's like I'm being a weird cowboy.
What are you doing?
Fish or something.
What is this?
it's like it doesn't have any kind of.
There's no context or.
Yeah, there's no context in like a classic comedy bit or like something. I'm a big, or he didn't go like, "Wow, baby wants a,"
right.
No. Like there's just like it's just a sound and like ear movement.
Okay, it's the best thing ever. And real quick, this needs to be said. Because
say it, brother.
At first glance, it's easy to say that Emma Stone is overshadowing, Nathan from a performance standpoint. But no, dude, on the second watch,
I know.
Big respect for Nathan, man, especially in the last episode, you to you moment. But also in that end of episode 9, his big moment where he's like, has his big dramatic moment after watching the cut. I mean, dude, he's killing it. I mean, it's so because he was getting criticized in the press in the beginning for being very flat and
the
flat
New York
white.
Times said that.
Yeah, and it's like
the Fielder method really works, I guess.
The Fielder method. No, but he really is killing it in this show.
No, but he held his own, especially those important final episodes. Yeah.
You to you,
but also the physical comedy or the physical acting genius of the being upside down.
You totally buy it.
It's like Buster
Keaton. So preposterous.
That's not easy.
No,
so good, so good.
The panic that he exudes when she's chainsawing him.
Oh yeah,
you
like,
don't
understand. Yeah.
I was like, I felt that. I was like, because I was thinking, would there be a circumstance in my horrible life?
I was thinking that too.
Would I would be pleading like that?
In that way.
It's so terrifying.
I did think about that too.
You don't understand.
And
don't do that.
And not being able to articulate, why they should stop
you don't
properly.
Understand, lady. There's a metaphysical, like anomaly in physics that's happening just to me. Like, and she's like, oh, okay, oh, right, okay.
And I love his little weird, like eccentric esoteric isms that he just like. There's that one scene where she's like in a really pissy mood because he wants to sell the house to like the kind of
the militia guy,
and then he like walks up to her and he's like, my hands are dry, and then he's like little extra there, care to share, and he like has like just some
row your boat.
Yeah, it's like
when she's doing like a workout.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, that's
row your boat. Because she's being nice to him, but then she gets cold as ice.
Yeah.
Remember that transition where she's faking the funk because she knows this is all so dark. This is unbelievable. The show. The network wants a happy couple, so she's like playing with like dessert with him.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, he's like thinking that they're like in good shape, and he's like, row your boat.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you want? She's like, I hate when you stare at me.
Yeah.
And it's like,
oh, so dark.
Dude, this is like
so dark.
Want to die.
It's like relationship hell.
It is
like pure
nightmare.
hell.
This show is awful.
Fucking nightmare.
It's the darkest shit ever.
Oh my God.
I think the last thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we can't be the last thing because we have to mention. I have to mention something. Well, unless you're going to talk about scenes, but there's something about the filmmaking needs to be addressed too, even if it's just briefly.
Let me do one more scene.
Okay.
And then we'll get we'll wrap it up with that. Last
Closing
little
in on 2 hours.
I know.
Two fucking hours.
I know.
I guess it deserved it.
It does deserve it. There's so much on the table here. It's so hard.
It's a lot.
10-hour show.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing is I just want to comment on because it's a very disturbing scene and it speaks to Whitney's her fucking insane mind. Is
it the golf course?
Yes, when she episode 7 opens with her leaving the racist statue of the Native American chief on her doorstep.
Insane.
And as like a joke, and it's so like that whole scene is so incredibly dark for me because she wants the social currency of Kara, not even just her.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's her art. It doesn't matter if it's her being a credit on the show, and it's going to cost $20,000, as I mentioned earlier, of this fucking blood money. And it's so that whole scene is incredibly dark,
terrifying.
Many
because it's you're questioning too. Like, is she fucking off her rocker? Like, is she antagonizing Kara? Is she manipulating her? Is she genuinely think this is going to impress her? Like, it's almost confusing.
It's like threatening too. It's kind of threatening.
Yeah. And that image is so disturbing too, just of that like racist thing.
And that for a moment, Kara is just seeing at her doorstep, thinking like this is like a militia
crime.
or something.
Yeah.
Like a hate crime. Yeah.
Right, and then they're at the table, then she manipulates her into believing this sob story, even though it's partly true, to kind of win her affection.
Unreal.
And then she has to buy her off. And
But as we said before, that scene ends with classic lingering take of Kara's like miserable soul seen on her face.
Yep.
And and having to reckon with the fact that she gave like a piece of herself away. And that's like what her art, that whole performance art was about.
Like here it is in practice, like hustling 20 grand out of this retardo white girl.
Yeah, exactly.
It's getting late. Give me a break.
It's getting late. We have.
We will.
Midnight oil.
You're all good. All right. Well, let's wrap it up here with just talking about the brilliant style of the show. Again, just we mentioned it earlier. Things, you mostly see the shots of things shot through other objects and the foreground. A lot of foreground fun foreground fun they're having with this.
Really drawing attention to the camera, it's shooting through a keyhole. It's
that's crazy.
The zoom and the pan down and shooting through a dirty car window, driving alongside of Emma Stone. I thought it's really contributed a lot to the film formally to like film language. I think to be just so blatantly use that kind of photography in a show. And when the first time through, watching it, I thought it was all like and maybe it is like Dougie's crew shooting stuff on the fly, and he's like, "You have your drone," and we see crew members walking through where they're not supposed to be sometimes, and. So I thought it was like all going to be part of his like alternate cut, but then watching some of Safdie's like, talking about it, he's like, oh, well, we just wanted you to feel the intrusion, we wanted you to feel. So I wondered like maybe it doesn't even have like a plot element in the show and it purely is just a stylistic choice meant to evoke a reaction.
I think so.
And the voyeurism and leading to like that feeling of being unsettled and constantly being watched and analyzed. I
love how it looks. Because it is, I guess what it really is pretty crazy, is that it's shot in HD. It's actually shot in HD and blown up to 4K is actually how they shot this show. Because you have to deliver 4K, I think, in 2023 when you're delivering a TV show. But they shot it on HD with older cameras. That's why you're getting a lot of the noise in what they're doing. But it is an artificial digital noise, which I think is awesome, And it looks so good. And
shout out to the music.
Yeah, shout out to the music. Alice Coltrane.
Incredible.
The fire burns on. Fire burns on.
Yeah.
but the score is just like such cold, alienating music that's a really bold choice.
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing.
I mean, there's times when it's just stabbing, harsh noise.
Yeah.
Do you know what he said about that?
And that's such a big part of it. Like you could never separate that. It's like... Yeah.
Do you know what he said about that? I think I had this right, but like he and Nathan were kind of sharing. Benny and Nathan were sharing like, songs and ideas and things they could use for music in the show, and I think it was like over HGTV footage. They were like listening to some of that like crazy ass whatever the fuck or something like that, and being wow, that really makes this like newly tiled bathroom seem really scary.
I love that. Like they stumbled on the peanut butter and the chocolate. By just like turning down the sound on HD. That's incredible. Well, because Benny, I guess, and his brother have an ear for kind of like harsh electronics. Because heaven knows what starts with like old Tangerine Dream, like first two albums, Tangerine Dream, and I always had respect for them for that one.
Sure,
like,
deep cut,
and the Uncut Gem score is also very synth. It's the same guy composing.
And that's Alice Coltrane with all like the creepy, moody vocal, female vocal.
I think.
Is it?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's really haunting.
So it's
great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So good.
It's like
the handful of like pop songs in it are really great. Like the Bob Dylan like demo tape, unreleased demo Santa Fe. It's like barely broadcastable quality. It's cool to use that.
Yeah,
and of course, Fly Like an Eagle too.
When Emma Stone is dancing, when Emma Stone is like singing in the car to that weird pop song,
I keep dancing by myself.
And it's like so disturbing. Like this
really
is what she listens to
really
by herself.
Nathan rapping.
Dude.
Dude, that's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. No, that's the first time you really see him.
Yes.
Like his real character.
That's
like
his real
him
self.
as a kid.
Totally.
Like him and Dougie as kids being
They're
real
13 again.
in the 90s, and like that's him being real.
Oh my
That's the only time he's real.
And happy.
Yeah, and
The only time you see him
happy.
happy.
Because he doesn't give a shit like how he comes off or what's like.
Well, they're
right
regressing
or,
too. To be
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got to end this
Wow,
show.
guys.
When he used to be happy.
We got to end this show.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Curse is great.
Hey, we are closing
Check
on
it
2
out.
I
hours.
believe I'll seen it after listening to us ramble here about it.
It is
Not the way to do. That's not the way to do it, folks.
I know.
Don't watch this. And
Watch
then
it
the
first.
show.
Yeah, it's really, truly
It's worth it.
one of the most deep and rich and disturbing things I've seen in a very, very, very long time. And I just hope that they. I hope that
Season 2.
man, yeah, that'd be great. But I
don't
just hope something
know.
else. Something else.
don't
Do
know.
some more stuff together. You guys are a great combo.
Yeah.
I mean, act in each other's shit, direct shit. It's so good. Also, shout out to the Zellner brothers, to friends of mine. They directed a handful of the episodes of The Curse. You guys did a great job. Just awesome shit, man. Like, yeah. Just
And use it as like a learning tool. Like I think they should
Yes.
go around to universities and communities and screen this as a learning tool.
it could really deprogram our society.
I do hope it gradually becomes influential in a few different ways. I
Me too.
agree.
Me too.
Just for like self-reflection a little bit, like just to kind of step back for a second.
yeah.
We gotta
And honesty
take it down
too.
a
I think
notch.
like it not only like on analyzing like how what we're going through, but like for these guys as filmmakers too are confronting their history of manipulating people,
Exactly.
Right.
and and how how do you move forward from that? Well, I think that's and by still being honest and true to yourself and not like putting forward like an artifice of
how
what
much
happened,
how much in the show is the idea of self-deprecating mentioned as well too, so maybe that's a little peek into that as well. All right, well, that is our, I guess, 2 fucking hours on
2 hours.
Clock.
one fucking season on The Curse.
It was almost 2 hours.
It was.
from my
Well,
under-
we've been recording this
I'm
so
gonna
far for
pass
2 hours.
out.
I know, we got to pass out. Real quick,
let's wrap it up.
Tom.
Okay.
We're going to wrap this up. Just tell the good people before we sign off, what is happening next week for your birthday episode? Be brief. Thanks. Go.
Okay, it's my birthday episode. I made a decision. I'm doing it. It came from Hollywood, 1982 film. It's a compilation of quote unquote bad movie scenes. And what I wanted to do, well, it was a huge hit when I was a kid, so I wanted to share that with you guys. That I have an affection for it. But what I also want to do is open up a conversation about sort of the history of the quote unquote bad movie, and talk about how it went from the start in the 70s into the 80s, and now here we are. And how a movie like this and this attitude that it represented in the early 80s got us towards like Mystery Science Theater, or just, your average crazy midnight movie screening that still happens in, in big cities.
Sure.
So it's basically just like, let's talk about like bad movies at a juncture where it was first coming into coalescence as a concept in the early 80s.
I love
it.
it.
Fun.
So next week for Tom's birthday episode, we'll be doing 1 fucking hour back. The 1 hour clock returns. It'll be 1 fucking hour on It Came from
Jesus
Hollywood.
Christ.
Is this available to see anywhere, Tom?
I think it's just on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be on YouTube.
YouTube, maybe Tubi. I'd give a check on Tubi on that one.
Tubi.
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 Could be Tubi. Okay. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us for 2 fucking hours to talk about this brilliant show. We will see you again next week for our regular scheduled programming. I don't know if we're going to have, Tom, a
Moment.
Oh,
of
I do.
Zen. Okay, you do? Okay. Okay. I guess we
I
will.
have a thought.
Okay. Okay. All right. Maybe that'll be our new moment, is you to you.
Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, you to you. Okay, everybody. Well, have a good rest of your week, and we will
Thanks
catch
for
you
hanging in there.
next week.
Thank you.
All right,
Everybody,
everybody.
who's still watching this.
Yeah.
as we
Oh, they
close
will
out
be.
our 2 hours.
They will.
God bless
All
you.
right.
God
Take care,
bless.
everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.